Alrighty. So, as always, I said I would get to talk about some of the European stuff that's gone on. I don't really know the full European competitive play schedule. There's like the continental qualifiers in Germany and France. I don't think there was a Materia Cup that weekend in Germany. I could be wrong. Um, I feel like that would have been removed if not. So, was there a second? Because this was also in Germany. I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I'm going to cover what I think is pretty relevant, though, if you want to see kind of what Europe does for a two deck format, which is the two deck uh, Zotzermir Spell und Mir. I can't speak German to save my life. I'm sorry, y'all. But this was a two deck tournament in Europe played near the start of the set, and I wanted to kind of go over the individual decks a little bit. So if you haven't watched it already, Steve Dolman of the YYT ended up winning the event. He has a full breakdown on his channel where he goes over in a live stream. He talks about his deck building process, how his tournaments went, the decision making that went into it. Um, I would recommend honestly go watch that. Like if you're subscribed to me and watching my videos, you're not watching the YYTs. Like what are you doing? Like genuinely, they do better stuff than I do. Go check them out. But uh, really interesting. He talked about how he thought Mono Water was the best deck in the format, which I really don't agree with at all. And the only deck he found it consistently lost to was Mono Earth. So he said, "Well, I'll just run what I think is the best deck and what beats the best deck." And he also liked that he didn't have to have much overlap between the decks. It's definitely an interesting take on both of them. He said that the only compromise he had to make was the Tidus and Meluso in the LB deck. And I honestly agree with his assessment. I think Mono Water can get by with just doing Lunafreya plus a Leo or a Leela. And I think the power play for Mono Earth of having Tidus is so large that I actually think it's probably the best thing you can be doing right now in that deck. I think that playing the Tidus in Mono Water means that the Mono Earth is missing the actual power play that makes Mono Earth a actual force to be reckoned with. Otherwise, I mean, the Mono Earth list is relatively standard because I think these are the lists that people really looked at to try to develop their own decks and decisions. The Mono Water deck is a little bit less standard, but again, you should just go watch his video where he talks about his decisions. The only thing I will say is he should have put Atomos in here, which would have allowed him to cut the Beatrix for a Sid Highwind. And also, like, Realm play Atomos means that all of these monsters get so much better when they just draw a card, and then the second one activates two backups, and you play another one which draws you another card. It just accelerates the clock for what Wind is doing so much relative to what other decks are capable of doing. And the opportunity cost of not playing it is you discard it for CP, and you have one less water card in the break set for Lena, which matters and exists and comes up, but it's so much less common than what's going on here that I really don't see it as a downside. I think it's just pretty much correct to do. So we're gonna go these in pairs. Second place we had a Waterfire Warriors deck and Mono Earth. Again, Mono Earth is just doing very, very well in all of these events. Notably, again, they kept the Tidus in the Mono Earth deck. It is the Mono Earth boss, as we all know, and as we predicted when the card was spoiled and revealed. That yeah, of course, this water card that only has water pips on it is going to be the Earth boss monster. Of course, yeah, that makes total sense. Couple of non-standard stuff in the Warriors list. One copy of Leftia, just a really solid card. Rounds up your pings, makes cards a lot better. Very good on damage 3 as well when it pings for 8k and also buffs all of your other stuff. Makes cards like the Demon a lot better. Makes your wards ping for 9k, which makes a big difference. Your Amaterasu's now kill Warrior of Light. Just a really nice one-of for sure. I mean, this deck is clearly doing well. It's performing in every region right now. Well, I'm still. I know I always go back to this card, and Zidane is very powerful, but it's so all in this deck sometimes too. And you have to run three because if you don't run three, you don't see it often enough with Axstar and Edgar. But you also like those are your only ways. It's like you have to Edgar it in or you have to Axstar it in. And Axstar means that you're reducing your ping damage, or Edgar means that you're not playing something like Lena and furthering your ramp. There's no Phoenixes that cheated into play. It's a weird card to get perpetually hung up on, but I I don't know on this card sometimes. It's clearly performing, it's clearly doing well. If you're seeing this deck at events, you should expect them to be on Zidane. A very common power play is going to be turn one. Like, I don't know how this deck always has it, but turn one Lena into turn two Tyvis into Axstar into Zidane is like the prototypical happens every single time against this deck for me. And that start is really good because then you can't use your burst to kill the Zidane without giving your opponent card advantage. Lena, this deck plays relatively aggressively for the color combination, so the Lena is really, really good at making those aggressive, like this anti-aggro plays a lot more difficult to do. And then Mono Earth, the non-standard stuff here, the one copy of Galif, the one copy of Sophie, I think are just about it. Both completely reasonable, powerful cards. If your opponent does not find an out to Galif, it's really, really, really strong. Decks like Fire, for instance, can really struggle to get him off the field. Like the Warriors list really does not have a great out to this guy, other than like Amaterasu him. And even there, he's still going to be very big and difficult to block. Like you have to Amaterasu him, and then you still have to block him. Uh, it's a nightmare, right? Or I guess like you can Axstar is really bad for him. But interesting to see 3 copies of Fenrir here. That's actually really that's unique. Obviously, usually you'll see like the Lev sixes or Amaterasu's, or like one copy of this with like a copy of like Hecaton Shear, like the 5 cost or the 3 cost that brings it back up. Definitely an interesting choice. I mean, it's a good card, especially like you can go play something like Emmett Selk into a backup, and then also break like a Chaos or something. Could be really good in that matchup. I like the tech. I think it's a good idea, a good concept. Uh, so interesting. So this is like an aggro ice lightning pile. Yeah. But we're on lightning, which is very strange and like a pretty low quantity. I guess to enable Sephiroth, which obviously is a really strong card, gives you removal that the deck would otherwise lack. And the backup engine of like Restrictor in particular is really, really good. Allows us to run Zidane because we can run this Reeve. A really interesting take, actually. And decks like this, I think, are really slept on in a way. I think this deck would have a really bad time into Chaos, just because there's not a lot they can do other than commit forwards, which then are going to get Famforted, forced to discard 2. And there are bursts, but they're not, the most impactful things. But I think that if you're not used to playing against a deck like this, it's really powerful. In particular, Shulk Zidane, I think is one of those like 2-card mythical combinations that just people do not realize is this broken. Shulk is absurd. If you haven't read this card, it's an Opus 2 card. It just gets to cheat in a 2-cost forward that isn't ice, so you play Zidane, and then your opponent discards a card when you do so. So as long as you can line it up, which they have the Drace to search it, you can go like turn 1 Lufenian into Shulk Zidane, or like Lufenian, and the next turn go Shulk Zidane. The opponent now has discarded 2 cards. They're having their hand ripped apart by Zidane. It's very difficult to line up defensive tools into a deck that is putting that much hand pressure on you. And again, people are not used to playing against decks like this, so I think this is a really interesting call, really powerful deck. And it's one of the decks that's also very hard to answer in the 2-deck format, because one of your decks is very likely to struggle with a deck like this. Second, we have a mono water deck. Interesting that we're on crystals and not on the X and Millie Rahal package. Um, this gives us edge. We're not even on Glaciella. It's just for edge. Am I reading that right? Lightning, Lena, Edge, Witch, Realm, Shinryu, Go. Yeah, the only use for the crystals off of the Oracle is Edge. That's an interesting one. I don't know how to feel about that. Again, we're on Realm without the Atomos. It really does raise the ceiling by an absurd amount. Uh, Also, just one Lena with two Leviathan is interesting. That's or no, sorry, two Lenas. Sorry, I'm getting it mixed up with the Edge. So two Lenas, two Leviathans. So it's the classic ratios there. Makes a lot of sense. Then we have a Bart's. Oh, not even Bart's Refia. This is playing this Bart's as a Bart's to enable a 4-color deck next to this arc. Interesting. I mean, it's otherwise a pretty normal Refia control list. No copies of Ingus in the backups. But I mean, these ratios are pretty normal for the most part. Other than that, summons, we're missing the Cucullins because they went in the other deck. One copy of Osler is kind of cool. Gets you King Tycoon, which can cascade down. And also, you can, like, if it lives, maybe you can reduce the cost on your Refia the next turn or something. I guess Refia's not the one you want. It's probably more like the Ferris. Very interesting list. And the other deck is a Water Lightning Scions. I'm not sure on Oracle. I love this card. I think it's really, really cool, but I also don't know that it is good enough to justify seeing play as the light slot. The other thing that's really interesting about Water Lightning Scions is that the backups are Water primary and the forwards are Lightning primary. So you're kind of in this like weird situation where you are not building your backups to play your forwards, but to enable them, which is not bad, but it is something to kind of keep in mind. Then we have a mono wind list with splashing Class 8 Moogle to play Shantoto and Aiko and Noctis. Really cool stuff, actually. This Shantoto has gone above and beyond my expectations for what the card could do. And if you can play it consistently with the Azura and a Chocobo in the break zone, you can just kind of infinitely just Shantoto, Azura, Chocobo, Shantoto, Azura, Chocobo over and over again. The Citra is becoming more standard in Mono Wind. It's kind of funny. Like, I've perpetually probably underrated this card. I really did not think Mono Wind would ever cut Shinryu for Citra, but it's kind of becoming the standard way of playing this deck. 3 copies of Riku. We're trying to get our burst count up, which makes sense. I mean, we're still only at 11, but the other thing is that this does give you a really nice cast too. Nini is another card I haven't seen in a ton of these lists. Same for like the 1 copy of Vaughn. Chocomog also non-standard as well. This card is not bad when you have both the Moogle engines and Stiltskin to proc both halves of the deck. Obviously, you're running like the Chocobo engine and then classic Moogle, and the Stiltskin can give you access to that Moogle backup for Chocomog. No Evray as well, very surprising. Stiltskin still has 2 targets in Luso and Nini, but my big fear with this deck still is probably the same as it was prior, which is it kind of does the Mono Earth thing, but not as well as Mono Earth. Like, if you think about it, like Luso played on 7 casts, it's not that much better than casting something like Montleonis for 3, reviving a Genova Synthesis and wiping the field, right? Except Mono Earth is also, like, it rebuilds better than this does in a way. And doesn't have the issues with aggression. But second deck Mono Earth, obviously. Fire wins the Dane in here. Again, looking for kind of cards to help push that advantage once the Warrior Light gets ahead. We're also on 3 copies of Riku and only 2 Leos. That's pretty interesting. Usually you see 3 Leos, 1 Riku if they're on the Riku. I don't hate the idea. I mean, Riku is a really strong card. I think the rest of this is pretty standard, though. 2 Surges is definitely unique, though. Very good card at closing out games, so definitely understandable. Next up, we have Hasib, who went with Knights. Squalid Knights, that's actually kind of a cool tech. No copies of Renoa as well, a little bit surprising. 1 copy of Ramsa again. I'll have to talk to Hunter on that one. I'm actually really curious what the logic is on this Ramsa. Because I guess it makes use of the crystals off of Lilith, but I really don't feel like we're going to get 2 crystals that often from Lilith to where we feel good with the Ramsa. I don't have any crystal gen backups. I mean, like Agrius, I guess you can go like Agrius plus Lilith, that'll get you 2 crystals, and then the Ramsa can do everything, but really interesting to see that becoming more and more standard. Yeah, I'll have to ask Hunter Nance on that sometime, why that is the thing. Same thing, the 1 Garland here, Hunter was on 2 forward Garland, 1 backup, but that is also becoming a little bit more standard. I'm surprised to see the Tifa. I mean, it's a burst, but it's so expensive. I can't imagine we're ever playing this. And we're also, our other deck is not playing Lena. So I'm a little surprised to not see it here as well. Other deck, this is, Fire Lightning 13. I know a lot of people say this deck is completely dead. I don't buy it. I really just don't see people playing it, which is part of the thing. Oh, it's also playing Scions. Very interesting stuff. We have a 3 Alize, we have 1 copy of This Justinian, and we obviously are running the Fire Lightning Ashtola. Yeah, that is a very interesting decision. Obviously, this Sarah is absurdly strong, and it's not that difficult to get to 3 FF13 forwards in this deck. No Amaterasu's in here. I guess they were in the other deck. Yeah, because they were in the Knights deck. So we're actually kind of low on fire. It would be a little bit difficult to play your Fanil or your Fang. But maybe we just try to get the dodge into play relatively early or something. Or the selfie and kind of... Like, you can go selfie for almost, ditch like a, so we'll say like a Estinian and a Fang, get back the Fang and selfies live. And then you play a second backup. Surprised to see this Reeve over the 3-cost Reeve. I've always found that reviving Lightning in this deck is like the most powerful thing possible. But yeah, this is the first result for Fire Lightning 13 in the set, and really the only one I've seen. We have a Bart's Refia list. Only on 6 copies of Bart's. The 1 copy from Melda, not standard in Refia control these days. Could be really strong, especially with something like the Ashtola to protect you. And again, you need to buff your win count a little bit if you're playing Bart's. Ashtola is a pretty nice way of doing that, as is the Azura. Does mean that we're using the arc backup instead of the arc forward. That makes complete and total sense. Surprised to see only 2 Sarah. I find that Bart's lists really want the 3 sometimes just to get the extra chance of Bart's plus Bart's and kind of going off with that combination. But also, I mean, you see the advantage of the Bart's list, though. We're able to run fewer backups and have a lot more room for just pure gas in the forward lineup. No Terra, no Une as well is definitely interesting. So we're not getting back our summons once we pitch them outside of the Kryl. Interesting, a good thing to note as well. I think this is the first time I've seen Death Gaze top cut an event as well. So shout outs to the Death Gaze there. And then we have a Hitlo combo as our second deck. Kolka and Larsa to line up the combo pieces. Only 2 Renoa is definitely interesting. Porum, that's cool. Make sure we get all of our pieces in a row. I think Ignis also not a standard part of these, but I actually like it. The backups when you go off don't actually do anything anyway. Or Ignis. Um, 3 Luminous Puma, 1 X-Ray. Yeah, the rest of this looks pretty normal for the Hitflow combo deck. This deck really has not been performing, and I'm not sure why, because it has a really good matchup into Mono Earth. But I do think it has a really bad matchup into Chaos, which could be the other side of the coin that's missing for why this deck is struggling so much in other regions. Because this deck has to line everything up, being forced to discard 2 cards and say, go off on turn 2 or I win, is just a very large ask for this deck to do. Which is why I think it actually is really well suited for a 2-deck format if you can afford to give up some of the power cards in Water and Earth for it, which maybe is why it isn't seeing play there, as well as giving up your Emmet Selk and your meaning you can't play Mono Earth, is a pretty big cost when you're not playing the best deck in the format. Lastly, we have a Water Lightning Scions. Different take. Relatively normal, though. Love seeing lots of different Ishtolos to kind of tech into with Alize if you want to. Rest of the list looks pretty good. Fortunals showing up here as well. I think this card is really solid. And we need the water cards to play anyway. And yeah, the rest of this looks like a pretty normal Water Lightning list. Last deck list is Mono Fire playing Citra to get Ifrit. That's actually really cool. I've liked this with Brynhildr because you can kind of make the Brynhildr do 7k and then draw a card. Being a 3CB4 that says kill that, draw a card is pretty good. Oh no, sorry, this Citra, not that Citra. Still like it. Still a good tech. Get back your Amaterasu on a burst. Only 7 bursts in the deck is a little surprising. Obviously, we're on the 2 Montleones. We're on the Miyu Mutsuki. No copies of Clara. So just as a thing you can do, obviously, no Geomancer. Huh. Now that is actually surprising. Culinarian, obviously really strong. Moro is a solid enough card. I get that. That one makes a lot of sense. Princess Goblin that can get us to Citra. We can then discard it if we need to for something. Do we have a way of like wheeling, like discard to draw in this deck? No, not really. Marlith is a one-of showing up. That's really cool. Caius with a bunch of Bahamets. Surprised to not see one copy of the Bahamut forward, just so you can't like say I'm against wind. I'm gonna just go all in. Phoenix really strong card as well. Oh, Princess Goblin here because we have the Goblin engine. That makes sense. The Goblin's so strong with Ject too. That fits. Yeah, this just looks like a pretty solid Mono Fire list. It's going to do all right into a lot of aggressive decks. Things like the Caius give you game against stuff like Chaos for sure. So I like that. I'm kind of surprised to see Ward without Tyvis. Those two seem to go hand in hand a lot. But I mean, Ward is just a decent burst on a big body. And there is no downside to the card in this deck because we're on Mono Fire anyway. So really cool stuff. So yeah, congrats again to Steve for winning. I hope you guys kind of enjoy this little snapshot of what Europe might be doing for the meta. I would say take these results with a little bit of a grain of salt because they're a little bit old at this point, and I'm sure Europe has been studying the North American results as well. Go check out my video on the North American decks as well if you want to get some insight into what those decks look like. This will be my last video before the Oceania Continentals. I have both my decks sleeved up and ready to go. Super excited. Wish me luck, and I will see you all in the next one.